Can y'all see how to close your next 100K in ARR? We'll start with who am I? Brief introduction. I'm Martin Roth. I live in New Orleans. I ran revenue for Levelset for 10 years. I was the 7th employee. I started when we had $0 in ARR. We sold to Procore at the end of 21. You can go Google it and learn all about that. But anyway, that's who I am. I guess that's what qualifies me to be in this room. I love working with early stage companies. I get a ton of energy around seeing you all go get your first customers, go get your next 10 customers. And I obviously love brick and mortar. They've been a great partner to Levelset and to me personally over the years. And so that's why I'm here. And if you need to get in touch with me, email is really easy. It's martin@martinroth.com. You can email me. I will respond. And if you have any follow-up questions or if you want to dig in on any of these topics. And if at any point throughout this, you want to ask a question, either talk and interrupt me, that's okay. Or you can do the little like raise hand emoji thing that Zoom does, which is always nice, and then I can call on you. So either way works. So Alice asked me to come back and talk to you about going to get your next $100,000 in ARR. And look, whether or not your product is actually charged based on a recurring basis, it doesn't matter. Really, this is about sales and selling and getting customers in a repeatable way. So I guarantee there is something in this conversation that you're going to be able to take and apply to your business. So before we talk about all of that good stuff, let's talk about why you were here. And it's not because Alice said, hey, you got to show up because this guy's going to come talk about revenue. Let's talk about specifically your business. Well, I'll be more specific. What's holding you back from closing more customers, getting more deals over the line? Never underestimate how powerful it is to celebrate getting every customer. I don't care how big, you got a deal. I'm going to teach you something about how humans learn. We call it the adoption challenge, or better known as the dummy curve, which is that everything we talk about right now, within an hour, you will forget half of it. By this time tomorrow, you will forget 70% of it. And by this time in 1 week, you will have lost 90% of the information that we talk about. And that's just true no matter how smart you are. That's how we are as humans. And even more so because we're inundated with all these stimuli with TikTok and everything else. And so my ask of you is try to find one or two things that you really can hang on to, that you can try to take action on, like today. You can leave this, and this afternoon, when you're at your computer or at your desk, you can start working on. Just find one or two things from this that will help you take advantage of this dummy curve. You can't avoid it. The dummy curve exists. So lean into it and know that just make sure the 10% is something that you can actually use in your business starting today. So, and this is, we put this up at like the beginning of every training class and remind people not class, like session. Every session we remind our team of this because, it's important to know how we learn as humans. So focus on the 10%. This is a rhetorical question. We don't have to get everybody answering this, but it's something to think about, right? You're in Formwork Labs, you have either taken venture dollars or you plan to take venture dollars. And one of the challenges with venture dollars, it's kind of like drugs. Once you're on it, it's really hard to get off of it. And when you take venture dollars, it is $1 billion or bust, right? You have to go get to 100 million, or at least have a plan to get to $100 million in revenue or bigger. And so it's important to think about when you're in the early stages, thinking about what's your product, who are you selling to, how am I selling to them, how will it scale, all those big questions. Really simple way to think about it is, how many customers is it going to take for me to get to $100 million in revenue? Really simple exercise. And it's made famous. This is about 10 years old. There's a venture capitalist. His name is Christoph Jans. He was with Red Point Ventures. I don't know if he's still there or not, but he wrote a blog post. It's linked down at the bottom here, and I'll send this slide deck to Alice so she can distribute, or I can post in Slack. But it's a kind of a cute story about different ways to get to $100 million. So you can go after mice, right? If you're like Spotify, for example, and you're selling $10 a month per subscriptions, then it's going to take you a hell of a lot of customers to get to $100 million in revenue, right? And then you go from mice to rabbits, and then rabbits to deer to elephants, and then elephants to whales. And a whale would be like $1 million a year customer. We're all in vertical SaaS, right? Because we sell into construction. There's a what's the name of this company? I think it's called Viva Systems. That's the one everybody likes to talk about. Viva Systems is in the healthcare space, and they very famously got to $100 million by just getting 100 customers. And maybe it's not exactly that, but all they did was they went after like huge hospital systems and they sold $1 million plus contracts. That's another way to get to 100 million. The reason it's important to think about these things is because how you design your customer acquisition strategy, your go-to-market strategy, is going to be very different whether you're Spotify or Viva Systems and every other iteration in between. And the biggest mistake that companies make early on, or trying to serve two or more at the same time, right? We made that mistake at Levelset. We had an SMB motion and we had an enterprise motion. And we learned quickly that we could not fly two planes at once. We needed to pick one plane to fly. And we went after SMB in the very start, and that's what gave us the momentum. And then we eventually scaled up market and were able to start closing the $1 million deals and all that other stuff. So it's important to be deliberate about which part of the market you're going after, what the deal size is that's going to get you to that 100 million, and then what's the team and go to market that you're going to need to build to go get enough of those customers so you can hit those revenue milestones. Pretty straightforward, right? This isn't complicated, but if you don't sit and think about it, then you run the risk of trying to serve all parts of the market and not being really focused. And like, make no mistake, you will get much more traction, much more quickly if you just focus. And that's, if you take anything away, like that's the real message here, is that your next 100,000, especially if you already have $1 of revenue, your next $100,000 in ARR should look very similar, almost identical to the first $1 in ARR that you have, right? You have a customer or 5 customers. You want to take that cookie cutter and stamp it as many times as you can, because the name of the game right now is proving that there's enough market and they care about your product, and then it solves real problems. The economics are kind of irrelevant, but we'll talk about that in a second. Speaking of, do you really, this is a question, another rhetorical question. Do you really know who your customer is? Do you know your customer? We struggled with this. We struggled with this for years. We struggled committing to a customer. We wanted to serve too many people. Even when we decided that we wanted to sell SMB early, we were confused about what the buyer persona was and who the stakeholders were involved in the purchasing decision. We were confused how to navigate the buying groups that make purchasing decisions. And the same was true when we went up market, serving bigger and more sophisticated customers. And so it's important to sit in this question: who is your customer? Build the profile out. I'm sure in this incubator and through the coursework that y'all do, you probably have some templates for ideal customer profiles. If you don't, reach out to me. I can provide a template. The template isn't the hard part. The hard part is having the customer development conversations and listening to the customer's words and making them part of that profile and making them part of your messaging and your pitch when you're going to the market and selling your product. This is an example, when we started and we were trying to think about how to go scale our revenue, everybody has their own opinion about what a persona is in construction. Like who are the people we're selling to? There's people in the field, there's laborers, there's foremen, there's people not in the field, there's the owner, there's the executives, there's the risk people, there's the procurement folks. There's all kinds of different types of people that have different levels of sophistication and different appetites for talking with software companies. Candidly, like a lot of the construction, they ain't about innovation. Like they just want to go build stuff in the real world, and they're not that interested in whatever innovation you're bringing to the market. And so this was a picture from an actual persona that we had. His name was Business Owner Eric. And you can think about this guy as like a master electrician who has an electrical contracting business, and he's been in business for 25 years. And you this persona. You may even know people personally that fit this persona. He's not in the office during the day. He's out in the field. He's going from project to project. He's meeting with customers. He drinks Bud Light. His kids are in college now, but he was the soccer coach for them, for his kids on the weekends. Like, really try to get in the shoes personally, professionally, and financially of this persona and understand who they are and how they think and what they want It's really, really important. And I'm using SMB because that's where we started and that's what I know. But the same exercise applies regardless of whether you're selling to mice, deer, rabbit, elephants, whales, whatever, right? Just really understand who is the person that you're selling to and how do you make them look good? What do they care about? What is important to them and what is success for them, right? There's another just quick reminder that's interesting as you think about who you're targeting in the construction industry. This is general. This is from Tom Tungus, who writes a great, it's just tomtungus.com. And this is about SaaS distribution. And it's just a commentary on where are the actual companies in the United States. 98% of businesses employ fewer than 100 people. When I saw this, I was like, whoa, hold on. Because when we were building out our prospecting list early on, and you try to go find companies that are big because you wanted to, it's easier if you sell one that spends more money, and all of the thoughts that you're probably having right now in your business, and realizing that most companies have fewer than 100 people totally changed how we think about which customers we wanted to go after. Now, it fit for our business because we had an application for small businesses. And this is what we eventually learned, which is the construction industry is the long tail, right? And even if you're, I don't remember the name of the company, but whichever one of you are selling into the design space, I think it's the like Yale and Matan, the folks from Tel Aviv, even designers are the long tail. Not many architecture firms and design firms are doing more than $15-20 million in revenue. And so the construction industry, even if they have a high degree of education and sophistication, the business sophistication is actually not that sophisticated. It's not that big. Fewer than 100 people, that's not a lot of employees, right? And so navigating that business, the reason this is important is when you think about going to market, you think about the size of business you want to sell to and how much you're going to charge them for the thing that you're selling. And then you think about the persona that you're selling to and what that person does every day and where do they eat Chipotle or do they go to Ruth's Chris Steakhouse for lunch, right? There's all of these things are important because when you look at construction and where the industry is, almost all the companies have less than $25 million in revenue. Like almost all the companies. Probably not. I don't know the actual number, but it's got to be north of 90% of the companies have less than 25 million in revenue. So just interesting things to think about as you think about getting your next 100,000. Where's it going to come from? What part of the market's it going to come from? And a quick, disclaimer. I'm not advocating that you need to sell to small business or that you need to sell to big business. I don't think one is better than the other. It's about whatever is right for your product and the fit for your product. All I'm encouraging you to do is be aware as you decide what types of deals you're going to sell to get to 100 million in revenue. You're going to have fewer shots on goal if you're selling $100,000 contracts to big businesses. And you're going to have a lot more shots on goal, and you're going to build your team differently if you're going after the long tail in construction. I want to move on to this next, which is this idea that many of you are thinking about. Hey, look, I've got to go ask for money. How much do I charge? By a show of hands, who has had a conversation internally, like within your own team, who has had a conversation about pricing your product in the last 10 days? Okay, I see at least 3. Okay, everybody struggles with this, especially early, is like, how do I charge? I'm looking at competitors' pricing. Well, they charge this way, and they charge per seat, and they charge per project, or they charge for annual construction volume, or they don't even charge at all. They gave them the first 6 months for free, and forget all of that. Start with the value that you provide. For example, with the Verisart thing, there's with the Verisart product, there is a risk with machines getting stolen or machines being used inappropriately or whatever it is. And there's a dollar associated with that risk. And even if you only have like a 50 or 70% educated guess on what the actual value of that problem is, make a guess, have a number, and go to market and see if customers actually feel that pain for that number. And then have a price that you're willing to ask for and see if customers will pay for it, right? So when I think about what I'm selling, it's always starting with the value. What's the dollar value of this product? right? What's the dollar value of the impact? Customers only care about what you can do for their business. They don't care about how cool your product is or how cool your background is or what you look like whenever you show up for the in-person meeting or they don't think about you at all. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Your customer does not give a flip about you. They only care about what you can do for their business. And so knowing the value and impact that you deliver for the customer's business is incredibly important. And when you have that, then getting the prices, we changed our price 900 times over the course of 10 years. Like price is kind of irrelevant unless you have the value nailed down. And price is only a factor in absence of value. Anytime you have somebody turn you down because they can't afford it or they don't see the value, it's because you didn't do the value building. You have to build value in any sales process. And all those customer conversations that you're doing, AJ, that's building more and more value. But it's got to come to a crescendo. The crown moment in that interaction is, are you ready to buy this product today? And they're going to either say yes or no. And that's when you become a business, when you exchange value for money. That doesn't matter. And really, it doesn't matter for like the first 100 customers. Like just getting customers to pay, you can always fix the price with future customers. It's a little different if you're doing like the super enterprise route and you're trying to get $100,000 deals. Getting the price right there, it can be a little more risky getting it wrong. But even still, like, so let's say you were 20% off. Like you were supposed to charge 100,000 and you only charged 80,000. Well, when it's one of your first like 4 or 5 customers, great. They get a discount or they get a premium, right? Because they were early on. You can always wash those economics out as the business scales. The important thing is the learnings you get from someone who's paying money and using the product and giving you product feedback and giving referrals and all of the tailwinds that come along with customers. That's your real value early on, because eking out each marginal dollar of profit in the deal is like a fool's errand. Like that's not how you go build the $100 million in revenue business, right? So the economics will work themselves out. I wouldn't over index on that early on. Okay. This is another way to think about it. This is a snapshot of Twitter. Jason Lemkin, he's the godfather of SaaS. SaaStr is his website. If you're selling software products, it's a great resource. They have tons. Now they have like a conference and all kinds of stuff. But I love this tweet. He said, like, if you can get 10 paying customers, then you have something. If you can get 10, you can get 100. And if you can get 100, you can get 1,000. Right. And so the whole idea is once you have one, just march to that next milestone. If that's 10 or 50 or 100, march to that milestone as quickly as possible, because you have something and you just need to stamp that cookie cutter as many times as possible. Right. That's all fine and great, Martin. I understand that we need to pick the right customer, not worry about price. We need to pick our entry to the market and the size of the deal, blah, blah, all the stuff that you talked about. That's fine and good. How do I actually do it? Right. Here are the 4 steps. In a way oversimplified way of how to get the next $100,000 in revenue is basically you need to define your customer profile and focus on them and not anybody else. And when I say define it, I mean literally write that shit out in black and white so that everybody in the company, put it on the wall so everybody knows this is our customer and that's who we're going after, right? The second thing is articulate your value. Again, write it down. What's the value that you provide to your customer, and put it in terms your customer understands. Use the language of your customer. That should come from customer interviews, spending time with the customer, get in the trailer. That's what we used to say often whenever we were getting our messaging wrong, is like, go get in the trailer, go to a job site, sit down with your customer, get in their office, get in their cubicle, listen to how they talk about the problem, and talk about the value you provide in terms your customer understands. The third thing is you need to nail down your sales process, right? We're going to talk about that next. And then the fourth thing is you got to build a demand machine, right? You need top of the funnel. You need opportunities that you can work so that you can turn them into customers. Let's talk about nailing down your sales process. This is straight from our sales playbook, which is we call the 3 moments of truth. We got this from a mentor of mine. His name is Barrett Foster, who's run revenue at a bunch of different companies. I didn't invent this. I stand on the shoulders of giants, which I encourage each of you to do. Beg, borrow, and steal wherever you can, and use other methodologies in your business because it'll get you farther faster. And this is the root of the 3 moments of truth in any deal, right? Every opportunity has to have a confirmed champion. We're going to talk about what a champion is in a second. Every opportunity has to have a time-based incentive. We're not going to spend a lot of time talking about time-based incentives, but just a quick note on this. A time-based incentive has to be something that is economic, that drives the prospective customer to take action. What we used was a discount on their annual subscription, right? And we could talk about the benefits and challenges of using discounts, but it wasn't a discount indefinitely. It was a discount, and the quid pro quo was, we will give you, 10% off, $1,000 off the subscription. The only thing that we ask is that you sign our agreement by Friday, right? And I'm just using a trite example, but the idea is we will give you economic benefit. In return, we want certainty that you're going to move forward. And that's really important, especially later on, because being able to forecast cash flow for the business becomes important, all that stuff. Even when you're early and forecasting cash flow it doesn't matter. It's like such a distant challenge that you have to figure out. It's still really important to have that if this, then that relationship in the conversation with your customers. And it can be challenging because, especially if you're early and you're making relationships and doing customer development, you create friendships with your customers, and it feels awkward to ask your friends for things, right? Everybody feels uncomfortable with that. But make no mistake, this is a commercial relationship. You're not talking with them so that you're not giving them pro bono advice. They're not giving you pro bono feedback. You're there to hopefully earn their business, which requires them to pay you money for value that you're going to deliver. So don't get confused about the purpose of the relationship that you have. And I'm not trying to be crass or cold. It's a commercial relationship. Make it clear that there is going to be an exchange, money for value. And that's okay. It happens all the time. You go get a coffee and the customer says, the guy at Starbucks says, that'll be $5.35, sir. And you have to swipe your Apple Wallet and you got to pay for the coffee in order to enjoy the coffee. This is no different. It's a larger scale, and maybe you have a better relationship with your prospective customer than you do with the barista at Starbucks, but it is still a commercial transaction. Never forget that. It's really important. A lot of founders lose sight of that because it becomes really personal. All right. That's enough on time-based incentives. Maybe we can do a follow-up session on the actual running the sales process and using these to your advantage. The last thing, and this is key, especially if you don't have experience in sales, right? For all of you founders that are more technical or product oriented and don't really, it's uncomfortable for you to sell and ask for money. That's okay. You can do it. If I can figure it out, I'm an idiot. I'm from Louisiana. Our brains don't work too good down here. If I can figure it out, you can figure it out for sure. Every deal, this is how I make it simple. Every deal has to have a next step. If you get off the phone with a prospect and you don't have a next meeting on the calendar, they're going to ghost you. Assume that they're just going to forget about you and you'll never talk to them again. This used to drive me crazy when we would do forecast meetings because I would press on one of our sales reps and say, okay, when's the next step? What are they expecting from us? What are we expecting from them? And you get a response like, well, and then, I'm hoping, and I'm like, stop. Pick up the phone, call them back. Hey, love the conversation we had. I meant to ask you before we got off the phone, when can we meet again? Are you free this Friday at 2 p.m.? Here are the things that I want to talk about. We talked about A, B, and C. Great. We're going to talk about that. And what I need from you is you need to send me that sample file that you were going to send me, and I'm going to import it. And then we're going to show you what that looks like in the platform. And I'm like, using a random example, but having a clear next step, memorializing it by email, y'all, this is like simple, stupid stuff. And you're like, yeah, Martin. Yeah, we know we need next steps. You would be surprised how often you do this in the deals that you're trying to close. You get off the phone and you don't set a next step. So just do it. Commit to making it a habit. However uncomfortable it is, commit to making that step. That's enough on 3 moments of truth. This is my does it work infomercial. Yes, it worked. we didn't implement this until Q4 of 2018. And you can see what our revenue did. This is quarterly bookings, quarter over quarter from 2015 to 2022. We went gangbusters after implementing this because the predictability of our business got so much better. And I wish that we had done it in 2015 or even in 2013 when we were trying to get our first revenue in the door, right? So let's talk about champions, because the champions are the key to getting any deal over the line. A champion is a person within the organization, could be the owner. Most likely it is not. Most likely it's an executive or somebody who can champion this project, and they take an extraordinary interest in adopting and implementing the product or project. And this is the key. They'll typically try to force the idea through entrenched internal resistance. That's a lot. It's like too many big words, but it's basically like your champion, when you're talking with your prospective customer, you only see like this much of the challenges that they have with getting your thing sold internally. They're having conversations at the water cooler and in their next meeting, and they're out there advocating for your product. And if you think you're still trying to figure out how to sell your product, how do you think your champion is doing selling your product internally, right? It's challenging for them because it's not their job to sell your product. So it's really important to make sure you identify who that champion is and you support them with all your might, because that is your key to getting more champions and building a buying group that is going to advocate for purchasing the product, right? It's not always that complicated. Sometimes it is if you're doing enterprise sales, and you can get like really technical when you start getting into Miller Hyman and some of these like really advanced sales. Or if any of you have been through Sandler, that's another like really popular sales training school. This is like, you can get real sophisticated with it, but at its simplest form, you got to find a champion and you have to get them to navigate the organization to a yes. And I'm going to talk briefly about this. Oh, we got 10 minutes left. Okay, this is like the 401 level course on navigating dysfunctional buying groups, but I'll go through it quickly and then we'll talk about building demand. So basically, anytime someone wants to make a purchase decision, they start at the top, right, where it says changes over time. Everybody starts as business as usual. Even if you're thinking about like buying a mattress for your bed at home, your mattress is fine until it's not. And then you need to go, or something changes, right? You move and you want to get a big bed. You want to get a king size bed instead of a queen size bed. So you need to go buy something. That's your recognition of need. And then you evaluate your options and you resolve your concerns. This mattress is too hard. This mattress is too soft. This mattress is just right. Then you just decide, I'm going to buy it. You make the purchase and then you implement. You go set up the mattress on your bed and then you live in it until something changes and then you go through it again, right? Just to use mattress as something that we've all been through, buying a mattress, that happens. The same is true for enterprise software. The same is true. Something changes over time and the customer either needs to fix something, accomplish something, or avoid something. Right? Those are the only three reasons people buy. Those are the needs that they have. And it's our job to figure out, where do you fit on that matrix? Where's your product fit? Once you identify the need, then you walk them through evaluating the options, resolving concerns, and then you help them make that purchasing decision. Usually what happens when you have a champion is you get them all the way through this buyer's journey and they're resolving concerns. And this was our champion. We called her Administrator Amanda. She was our champion for our SMB business. And she gets to the point where she's ready to go make the purchase decision. But the problem is, Administrator Amanda is an office manager at a plumbing company. You think Administrator Amanda can pay $6,000 for a software subscription? No. So what happens? She's got to go all the way back to her boss, business owner Eric. And where is he? He's up here in the top right. He doesn't even know he has the need. So what do you think the conversation is like, right? Never mind Levelset's buyer personas. What do you think the conversation is like when you have a champion for your product who's all the way at the point where like, we need to buy this. And then they go talk to another stakeholder in the business and they start to pitch it to them. What do you think the conversation is like between them? The other persona is like, well, why do we need this? Right? We're doing just fine. We don't need to fix anything. We're not trying to accomplish anything. We don't need to avoid any risks. Right? You don't have a collective definition of success, right? And so once you find your champion, it's really important, and this goes to your challenge, Yell, is getting folks like this is like straight down the line, the challenge that you're dealing with. And it never goes away. This is always hard, but trying to get as many of the stakeholders involved as early as possible so that you have a common definition of success, or we called it a collective learning experience. If everyone goes through this buyer journey at the same pace, you're much more likely to have a faster sales cycle and get to a yes quicker, right? But the takeaway here is that every buying group is dysfunctional. If you have a significant other and you ever tried to buy a mattress with your significant other, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Every buying group is dysfunctional, even when you live in the same house with them. So for sure, it is dysfunctional when you're in a business that has politics and people are trying to get promotions, or maybe they're competitive and all that stuff. The reason this is important is understand the headwinds that you're going up against when you're asking for dollars. And instead of getting frustrated because it's so hard to push against those headwinds, work with them. Know how to work with them to use them to your advantage, right? And it's all about how you navigate that sales process. So at its best, you have your buying group aligned. You'll do the demo after you have that collective learning experience, and they both acknowledge that they have the need in the business. And then you confirm the champ after, and there's a specific play that we ran on how to confirm the champion and all that other stuff, which we'll get, we'll do that in another session. But the takeaway here is every company you're going to sell to has a dysfunctional buying group. Use that buying group to your advantage. Align all of those stakeholders at the beginning of the process so they have a common definition of what success looks like. And then confirm your champion, set that time-based incentive, and always, always, always have a next step on the opportunity. Building a demand machine. This is another one of those that like, there's no silver bullet. Last year, or really like the last 24 months, product-led growth was all the rage. You know how long it took for FieldWire to get product-led growth? A long freaking time. If you go at Javed and Yves, like they can tell you, it's really, really hard to do that. If you're Slack, yeah, sure, maybe you have product-led growth, but I'm pretty sure you're not Slack. I mean, maybe you are, and that's great, and let me invest in your company. But otherwise, you're like the rest of us, and we got to go do hand-to-hand combat to go get every dollar. And eventually, if you're FieldWire or Building Connected, you start to get the lift from your network, but it takes a long freaking time to get there. And we had it too. We had network effects in our business. It takes a long time. So you can't bank on that, especially for getting your next $100,000. That will come. So how do you build demand in a way that you can control? At the very least, you can control how you're going to get interest in your business. And this is the non-sexy stuff. This is the like, sorry, it's just sales. It's boring or exciting if you're a masochist like me, but you got to go out there and you got to go smile and dial until they buy or die, right? So I just put two different paths here. If you're down market and your product is under $20,000 a year, right? There's a path. And if you're up market and your product's over $20,000 a year, there's a path. That $20,000 is arbitrary. Like I just put a number that's basically, selling bigger than $20,000 deals usually is a little more complicated, but I wouldn't over index on what that number means. So down market, selling to SMBs, it's pretty straightforward. Go, especially if you already have one customer, go build a list of 100 customers. Here's the pro tip. If you're going after SMBs, start geographically. Don't go roughshod across the whole country. If you're just selling into the US, start with not just Florida, start with Orlando, Florida. The reason this is important is because SMB construction companies talk. They're on the same projects together. If they're in the same city and you get traction with 1 or 5 or 10 of them, you can very quickly use referral and brand recognition to go gobble up that geography. We did this well at Levelset. PlanGrid did it. Building Connected did it. Like, I didn't invent this. Like, using geography to your advantage. And it's not just geography. It's you're using the social fabric of that geography in the industry to accelerate your sales motion. So basically build a list of 100 companies, put it in Excel, put it in your CRM, and then make sure you have the phone number and email address for at least 2 contacts at the company, right? And so what we would do is you'd build your list, and then you'd create an email and call cadence, and you can go Google, and there's tons of examples of great call cadences. And if you ever want help with like where to look or how to build a good cadence that's like good at getting attention in cold outreach, you reach out to me. I have resources for you. But 5 calls and 5 emails over 10 days. That's plenty enough. And then start with 30 at a time. You start with 30, you run them through. Some people will say yes. Some people will tell you to go pound sand. And then some people won't even answer at all. And as you work through that, it should, with 100 contacts, it should take you around 30 to 45 days to work through that list of 100 SMB companies, which is 2 contacts each. Maybe 2 months. Like that's probably about 100 contacts a month is a good rule of thumb to think about. And then what's going to happen is you're either going to set opportunities or you're not. If you have opportunities, great, you got it, right? And even if you don't create an opportunity, always ask for a referral. And it can be as simple as, hey, I know this isn't the right product for you. Do you know anybody else in the Orlando, Florida area that might be interested in this? And you'd be surprised how often people are willing to refer, even if they just give you the name of a company. Well, you know what? You hang up the phone and then you call that company. Hey, Johnny over at Sam's Plumbing just told me that you guys would be interested. Do you have 5 minutes to talk? And then you got the call, right? I know that cold calling is it is intimidating, and unless you're like a very, very rare type of person, it's always intimidating. I get intimidated cold calling, and I've made, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of cold calls in my career. It always sucks, and you get butterflies, and it's intimidating, but you push through the discomfort because it's part of every early stage company. Is you just got to go build that groundswell of first customers, and then you can hire people for it, or you have enough traction where you're getting organic business. I guess I should put one other thing. If you're going after SMB, what we did well was we published a ton of content and drove organic traffic to our website. That is an option, and that is something you should consider if you're going after small businesses, or even if you're going after big businesses. Like writing content and publishing useful content that drives traffic always pays off. It just doesn't pay off in the short term. And this presentation is really around like, how do I get $100,000 in the next 90 days? And so that's why I don't talk about organic content and organic traffic. And I don't mean TikTok. I mean like blog posts and videos and YouTube and all that other stuff. You're going after suppliers, go to the Supply House Times 150, go to the Pro Sales 100, and look. There's a lot of consolidation in that market. And it's usually the Pareto principle, where like 20% of the market owns 80% of the market share. Go build your top 100 suppliers that you want to sell to. And then you want to be really, really careful and deliberate about which persona you want to target, because you're actually going to be sending them physical things in the mail, right? That's what we did early when we were going up market. I called it lumpy mail. And like, I think you can go Google lumpy mail and you'll see examples of this. This is like one of those little like boxes like this, and it costs like $1.50 to send, right? It's not that expensive. You put something in here. It could be as corny as it gets. It doesn't actually matter. It's just the fact that you have something that will be FedExed to them or US Postal Service, and it's going to get to them. People open lumpy mail. Like, you'd be surprised. If you get a FedEx package, you're going to open it. So you have a direct line to your buyer. It takes longer though. And so I think about this as more of like an 8 to 12 month runway, where you have that list of 100, and every month you line up and you're packing lumpy mail boxes and envelopes and you're sending them out, and you just follow up with 2 calls a month. And if you do that, like I swear to you, if you do this for 10, 11, 12 months straight, you will have opportunities and customers. It just works. I don't know. It just works. Trust me, it works. I've seen it. I've done it, and I've seen other people do it over and over again. And that's, if you don't have any traction, or you don't have clout, or you don't have any intros, just good old fashioned hustling is how you get in the door. And then the last thing I'd say on this is, once you get to 5 active opportunities, stop. Because trying to manage more than 5 active enterprise opportunities, even at $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, it's too much. And you're gonna have a poor selling experience and a poor buying experience from the customer, and you're not going to learn as much as you should. And so That's the dream 100. And it also works like if you go to a conference and you know who that 100 is and you go chase them down and get in-person meetings. The point is really just about selecting the right companies and then being methodical about how you go after them, because people in big companies, they are scared of risk in most instances, and exposure to you and your brand reduces their perception of the risk of working with you. It's a really important concept to understand. And so going at enterprise is really just about exposure, familiarity, so that they don't get fired if they buy your product.